Top 10 animals that love being high. 10. Cats. More of a misconception than that a cat actually abuses a substance. If you have a cat, you've most likely tried giving it Nepentacataria, commonly known as catnip. This one isn't really a drug like the others on the list, but is actually an herb very closely related to mint. But it does contain a substance called nepetalactone, which can have a mild and temporary stimulant effect in some cats. And that's the problem with catnip. Some cats are bothered by it and will go crazy over it, while others will just remind you that you can't buy their love and they still don't want anything to do with you. Catnip has many different effects on cats, but here are the most common ones. They'll roll around in it. They will become very hyper after taking it, or they may become very laid back and relaxed. 9. Dolphins. Another common one that most people have probably heard of. That's right. Dolphins are the real threats of the ocean and are despicable losers who love to get high. They do this by first surrounding a pufferfish and biting on it lightly. Not only will they nudge and bite the pufferfish, the dolphins take it a step further by launching it out of the water and playing with it, leaving the pufferfish completely traumatized for the rest of its existence. And as you can imagine, this causes the pufferfish to completely panic, triggering its defense mechanism and releasing a toxic poison called tetrodotoxin, one of the deadliest poisons in the world. To put it in perspective, one pufferfish has enough venom to kill 30 adult humans, or about 15 average-sized Americans. Although it is fatal, dolphins have now learned exactly how much of the venom they can tolerate without dying. They were filmed passing the pufferfish around for 20 to 30 minutes at a time, before letting it swim away. The effects the poison has on the dolphins are quite interesting. They seem to enter a euphoric state where they become very calm and relaxed, and even become mesmerized and completely fascinated by their own reflection on the water's surface. 8. Birds. Now we'll start with the ones that most people have never heard of, but have probably seen firsthand. Have you ever come across a dead bird crashing into a window or building and wondered, how could it have unlimited airspace to fly around and still manage to crash? The truth is, he was probably flying under the influence. This usually happens after the first frost, causing fruits and berries to ferment and create ethanol, a type of alcohol. And of course, birds know this. They will then start eating as much of the fermented fruit or berries as possible to get completely hammered. And in certain parts of the world, bird alcoholism is on the rise. Just look at Yukon, Canada, where they built a sanctuary for birds who have had too much booze, which is essentially a drunk tank for birds. Here they are placed in small cages until they sober up, but once they do, they are released back into the wild, where they can continue to drink. So the next time you see a bird that doesn't fly straight, remember that it's probably a degenerate alcoholic. 7. Honeybees. Like number 8, most people probably don't know it, but once you hear about it, you will realize that you have encountered it at some point in your life. This one is a little more violent and doesn't have the ending you would find in a massage parlor. Have you ever come across a honeybee that crawls on the ground and doesn't seem to want to fly? As a child, I always thought this was because the bee had recently stung someone and was now dying a horrible and painfully slow death. But now, as an adult, I am much better informed. Now, when I encounter a crawling bee, I now know that it is either completely drunk or dying a horrible and painfully slow death. You see, as temperatures rise, the nectar in plants can ferment, and you guessed it, it becomes alcohol. So when bees go to collect pollen from the plant and drink some of that sweet fermented nectar, they become completely drunk. And this is when you might encounter a bee that has lost all control of its sense of direction and motor skills. The sad thing is that if by some miracle the bee manages to return to her hive, it will have to go through the garden bees. Think of these guys as the bouncers of the basket, but much more violent, aggressive, and heartless. When a drunken bee appears in the hive, two things happen. It either gets a lifetime ban from the hive, or arms are torn off, wings are torn off, legs are torn off, Antennae are torn off and eyes are torn out, and it dies a horrible and painfully slow death. But don't worry, it's all done for the sake of the colony, as fermented nectar in the hive can cause the entire colony to collapse. 6. Fruit flies. Offer a male fruit fly a choice between food soaked in alcohol or its non-alcoholic equivalent, and his decision will depend on whether he has recently been mated or rejected by a female. Flies that have been rejected are more likely for the alcoholic drink, researchers have discovered. 5. Vervet monkeys. The reason why the monkey is so high on the list is simply because they are not just alcoholics, but downright disgusting criminals. When these monkeys can't relieve themselves from fermented fruit, they turn to a life of crime and steal alcohol from tourists, and they're damn good at it. They wait patiently in the shadows for the perfect opportunity, and the moment someone puts down their alcoholic drink, it will be their first mistake. Once you look away, it's already too late. The monkey will have his greasy hands on it and will already be guzzling down the alcohol. They are the last animals of this list that definitely belong in AA meetings. 4. Lemur. We continue with the black lemur. Who would have thought that these cute animals from the island of Madagascar would turn out to be such despicable and gruesome creatures? The black lemur has a diet consisting mainly of fruit, but occasionally it likes to eat a toxic combination of chemicals, including cyanide. He can consume this if he finds a centipede and starts chewing it lightly. This causes the centipede to curl up and release a toxic chemical intended to deter animals from eating it. But for the lemur, this chemical just signals to the boys that they're in for a wild night. Unlike the others on the list, there is actually one health benefit to getting your hands on this dangerous venom. After just one blow from the centipede, the lemur starts drooling uncontrollably. They then start rubbing the saliva and toxins all over their bodies to protect themselves from mosquitoes that transmit malaria. But don't think it's all business. The lemurs continue to take hits from the centipede, consuming more and more of the poison until they are completely obliterated. It reaches the point where they are so high that the only option left is to sleep it all off.
3. Reindeer. Do you remember that little red mushroom from the Mario Kart games? The real name of this mushroom is Amanita muscaria, and it is insanely poisonous, causes very strong and intense hallucinations. But this doesn't seem to matter to the reindeer from Siberia, Russia. Once the reindeer has eaten the mushroom, the effects begin to occur. Then they start to behave very strangely. They run around aimlessly and start making strange noises. But the reason it is so high on the list is simply because it has a bad influence on others. Apparently, people watched them eat the mushrooms, and they made it look so good that they had to try it for themselves. Some people got incredibly high and had some of the most intense and vivid hallucinations, while others died. Scandinavian shamans came up with the idea of feeding the mushrooms to reindeer and then collecting their urine for later psychedelic use. It seems the reindeer love the experience. Scientists believe that reindeer actively forage for mushrooms to keep themselves busy during the long winters. 2. Jaguars. Even an apex predator needs sometimes a break from killing and mauling other animal species. They do this by searching for the yagsvine, one of the key ingredients in making ayahuasca, perhaps the strongest hallucination drug on Earth. And once the jaguar consumes it and the effects kick in, they start turning into a big, goofy, intoxicated kitten. A few years ago, the BBC captured all of this on camera and broadcast this on TV. It's quite interesting to watch. The indigenous people of the Amazon claimed that the jaguars consumed this medicine because it enhanced their senses and improved their ability to hunt. But they deny it. The cat does it simply to discover things about the universe that it would not otherwise know. 1. Parrots. Due to the severity of the situation, the parrot finished last. In northern India, these birds are so addicted to opium that farmers have reported suffering huge losses in income because of these birds. The farmers who have special permission to grow the plant have done everything they can to prevent their plant from being eaten. And it is not uncommon to see a parrot flying away with an entire opium pod for itself. Apparently, a single parrot will come down and take a bite of the opium milk 30–40 times a day. And the sad thing is that since opium is a hard drug with very real health consequences, the time comes when parrots become addicted to it. They're as good as dead. Because once farmers harvest the plant, the birds are left with such terrible retreats that it ultimately costs them their lives. Parrots falling from trees and power lines are becoming increasingly common, but it doesn't stop there. When a farmer plants the next batch of opium the following year, the vicious circle begins again, like a nightmare that never ends. Thank you for watching.